Happy birthday to you.
No one ever thought this would be Daniel Dana's last birthday.
Beautiful video of Daniel at his 5th birthday party surrounded by his father and a grandmother and an aunt.
Daniel was a bright, curious, soon-to-be first grader who loved karate and playing his guitar.
You can see the love, you can see the happiness, and you can see Daniel's beautiful smile and face. Daniel was a beautiful child who was loved.
The only thing that made the little 5-year-old sad, his parents' constant fighting.
They met in Iran, got married, and shortly thereafter he brought her to the United States. I think it was challenging for the marriage.
Attorney Mary Beth Ayers says Nargis Shafarad and Hamid Dana's marriage was doomed from the beginning.
They're actually related. They're first cousins, but not biologically. She was adopted.
Court records show the Iranian immigrants had filed restraining orders against each other. Prosecutor Steve Chaikin says there were even allegations of abuse.
There was a lot of going back and forth with arguing, text messages.
Their bitter divorce was followed by an even nastier custody battle over little Daniel. Ayers says Nargis was jealous over a young nanny Hamid had hired and was livid when Daniel spent time with them.
Seems like at this point she was willing to do anything and to go to any length to make sure that child would not spend time with his father.
Yes, and I think the way she saw the child was kind of spoils of the custody war.
Hamid in turn hired a private investigator to prove Nargis was an unfit mother.
He wanted custody, and it was horrible. They were using Daniel as a pawn.
The day before the final hearing to determine which parent would win primary custody of Daniel, Nargis asked a friend to borrow his car and drives to Daniel's school in Gaithersburg, Maryland.
Talk to me exactly about what happened.
It was the last day of school, and she picked up Daniel. She took him to a lot of different restaurants, and then just started to drive around.
Sometime around 3 a.m., Nargis decides to drive Daniel to Ocean City, Maryland, about 4 hours away for a spontaneous beach trip. But they never make it. On a dark, twisting suburban road, Nargis loses control of the car, barrels over a concrete median, and the car explodes into a fireball.
In the distance, I saw a vehicle that was like on fire.
You saw the actual vehicle
Yeah.
on fire.
Paramedic R.G. Kepke just happened to be returning from another call and rushed to the scene.
What's the first thing you did when you actually got out to the vehicle?
I asked the bystanders outside if there was anybody in the car. Some of the bystanders said there was an individual on the ground on the other side of the car.
It's Nargis face down on the asphalt, writhing in pain.
Was she badly burned?
Some of her clothes were burnt off, and she had some dark colored skin going on. So she was talking, she was screaming, and I asked her if there was anybody else in the car, and she said her son was in the car. But the car was still on fire.
The desperate mom pleads for Kepke to save her only son, but all 4 of the car doors are locked.
The whole inside was covered with smoke. All the windows were dark. I was able to bust out a window, open some doors. I didn't see anything except like a bunch of blankets on the floorboard. And I didn't see a child's car seat or anything in the back seat.
Moments later, a Montgomery County fire engine arrives and firemen extinguish the flames, but there's no sign of Daniel.
What did you do at that point?
I still asked if she had her son in there, and she said yes. So I didn't know if she was like out of her mind, like, you know, maybe she thought he was there, but he wasn't.
Nargis is rushed to a burn trauma center in grave condition. Firefighters then begin digging through the still smoldering car. They find heartbreak.
What did you discover?
The firefighters discovered a body in the back seat. It looked like we covered up by blankets.
Did you actually see Daniel in the back seat?
I saw part of him.
Daniel is burned beyond recognition. But it's where his little body is found that raises eyebrows.
It wasn't until you figured it was wrapped up and pushed down in the back seat. It wasn't in the car seat that she started going, okay, this isn't right.
Fire investigator Joel Shackett and a crash reconstruction team are called in to determine how the car caught fire and, more importantly, how little Daniel died.
Was the fire pretty significant?
To the interior of the car, yes.
Police photos reveal the car's badly charred interior, but oddly, there's little damage of any kind to the outside of the car.
It had just didn't seem to be adding up. For something that had that much action, you'd think that it would be a very high-speed collision.
And even stranger, the car's fuel tank was completely intact.
There was nothing wrong with the vehicle.
There were no leaks. There was nothing that was broken during the collision. Fuel tank, fuel pump, fuel lines.
If there was no damage to the fuel tank, then what would explain this?
Several people had said that they smelled something that they believed was gasoline.
Fire investigators in Gaithersburg, Maryland are about to uncover the most heartless crime imaginable.
They saw that there was something that wasn't right.
When rescuers arrive on the scene, they initially believe 5-year-old Daniel Dana is the innocent victim of a fiery crash.
When you're there and you see this little body in the back.
It crushes you. You just can't understand it. But we have a job to do. We have to find out what caused this fire.
Daniel's mother, Nargis Shafarad, who was driving the boy to the beach that night, is also severely burned and rushed to a burn unit.
Mainly her hand, so I thought at that time that she was maybe trying to put the fire out.
By all appearances, a horrific tragedy. Until an arson dog gets a whiff of something truly terrible.
The investigator that was actually up on the car said he thought he had an odor of something similar to gasoline.
The odd thing, that odor is not coming from the outside of the car. It's from the inside.
It was on Daniel's clothes. It was on the blanket Daniel was wrapped in. It was on the front seat. It was on the floor in the front seat. It was along the door rails. It was on the floor of the back seat where Daniel was located.
What investigators can't figure out is how the gas got there.
We found no mechanical problems with the vehicle at all.
This was just an odd scene from the beginning, wouldn't you say?
We finally figured out that there was something more than just a car fire after an accident.
Cops head to the burn center to speak with little Daniel's mom. She's in grave condition, but offers up a strange explanation, claiming she was hauling 2 gallons of gasoline in the front seat.
She actually gave an excuse to say that
she was supposed to be going to the beach and she didn't want to run out of fuel.
Nargis tells investigators she filled 2 water jugs with gasoline in case she couldn't find a late-night gas station on their way to the beach, stowed them in the passenger seat, forgot, then a short while later lights up a cigarette, and the car erupts.
She had fumes on her right hand, and that's what ignites first, is her right hand. And then some of her body ignites as well, and then she throws herself out of the car.
The distraught mom's explanation, while bizarre, seems feasible. But it's what Nargis doesn't ask investigators that raises real suspicion.
She never once asked the police about her son. You know, is he dead? How did he die? And didn't even shed a tear.
Do you think she had any plans at all to go to Ocean City, Maryland?
Absolutely not. I think that was a made-up story. Anybody who has any sort of small life experience knows that there's gas stations between here and someplace that's at least 4 hours away.
As detectives continue to sift through the scorched wreckage, they hit what they call an aha moment.
The gas tank in the car wasn't even full. So when she said she filled up the extra gasoline in the containers just in case there weren't gas stations on the way to Ocean City, we know that's a lie because she didn't even fill up her own gas tank all the way.
Then this. Prosecutor Steve Chafin says detectives discover someone tried to torch the car before it erupted into a deadly fireball.
We can see the attempt on the right side front door. You can see the charring where somebody took a lighter and actually just tried to light the car on fire. That didn't work.
Could it be possible? A loving mom douses her 5-year-old with gas, lights him on fire, then stands back and watches him burn to death.
We believe that she's now using the gasoline to sprinkle it on Daniel, and it even reached his underwear.
Then the most shocking revelation of all.
The medical examiner told us that he didn't have any soot in his lungs. So that means he wasn't breathing at the time of the fire.
He was already dead.
So Daniel was already dead.
5-year-old Daniel Dana did not die in a tragic car fire. His death was not an accident, it was murder.
At what point did your investigation take a turn down the homicide path?
The very second we were informed from the chief medical examiner's office that they were going to call it a homicide.
The medical examiner says the little boy was dead before the first flame. Toxicology reports show he was poisoned, given a fatal dose of diphenhydramine.
What's interesting is diphenhydramine is not a drug that you find in average children's medicine. You really only find it in Benadryl. But that's not medicine that you give to a child to bring down a fever or for a cold or anything like that. It's medicine you would give to a child for allergies, poison ivy, a rash, none of which he had.
And the amount of the drug found in little Daniel's body? Horrifying.
He had 2.5 times in his blood what would kill an adult.
Daniel's mom, Nargis Shafarad, tells detectives the fatal overdose was also an accident, claiming she unknowingly gave her only son too much medicine for his cold, then panicked when he stopped breathing.
She gave her son, Daniel, at least a bottle of liquid, maybe more.
An accidental overdose? Not likely, but nobody wants to believe a mother would kill her own 5-year-old son. Then police uncover this text message Nargis sent to Daniel's father months earlier. It explains in detail the proper dosage of medicine to give Daniel for a cold.
It wasn't as if she was clueless. She knew the exact amounts like any good parent should.
And the most heartbreaking news out of the Montgomery County Coroner's Office, this sweet little boy actually tried to fight for his life against his own mother.
He had injuries to his eyelid, to his cheek, to his face, to parts of his face, because physically the medicine was forced down his throat.
What's really horrifying in this case is that there are injuries that are fresh, that the medical examiner said shows no signs of healing, which means that they most likely occurred right around the time of his death.
She was jamming it down to his mouth.
Yes, to making him take it.
Prosecutor Steve Chaikin says Daniel's brutal murder and cover-up was staged by the one person he trusted to love and protect him.
She planned it, she executed it, and instead of calling 911, she went and poured gasoline on it.
Detectives believe Daniel most likely suffered for hours while his mother drove around, force-feeding him medicine and waiting for him to die.
And at the exact moment when she needed to be a mother, she made a decision to go get gasoline to burn her son in the car to make it look like an accident.
Once Daniel was dead, cops believe Nargis then stuffed his little lifeless body in the back seat of this car, doused him with gasoline, and set him on fire.
He couldn't even defend himself.
What did he do that was so bad?
So terrible and so bad that he had to be murdered and then stuffed in a car.
And set on fire.
This was an attempt to cover up a brutal murder of her own child and make it look like an accident. He burned to death, woe is me, and to gain pity and sorrow because she was the victim in the case.
Prosecutors believe Daniel's death was a cruel case of revenge. Nargis was trying to get back at her estranged husband, Hamid Dana, for divorcing her and trying to take Daniel away.
Father wanted custody more than anything. Mother stopped that from happening because she killed him. Father will never get custody.
Court records show Nargis sent Hamid this haunting text message just days before Daniel's death, saying simply, "I will make you cry. You will be sorry."
They were using Daniel as a pawn, and in this war of divorce, the spoils of the war was murdered.
Instead of dragging everyone through a trial, the mother in this case actually pled guilty to her charges, and Crime Watch Daily was inside the courtroom on the day of sentencing.
Cameras were banned, but what I witnessed was raw and emotional.
You were fighting hard today for the maximum sentencing.
Yes.
Because you believe this was premeditated.
Absolutely. It was an extremely premeditated and determined murder.
Nargis Shafarad begged for mercy, telling the judge she was a broken woman. The prosecution believes it was a desperate act for a lighter sentence.
I actually looked over at her at one point, and she was doodling, drawing pictures in her notebook.
Daniel's father, so heartbroken he tried to speak, but couldn't, instead releasing this written statement. Daniel didn't pass in an accident. He passed because this woman wanted to get back at me and seek revenge for divorcing her. No human should do this to her own child. No parent should have to bury their child. Then Circuit Judge Nelson Roop delivers his sentence.
Judge Nelson Roop of the Circuit Court for Montgomery County gave Ms. Safarad, who was the mother of Daniel, a sentence of life suspend all but 50 years.
Did the judge get it right today?
I think justice won today, and that is always something great to take home with you.
But firefighters want Daniel's father to take something else home with him.
The fire isn't what killed Daniel. And at some point in time, I hope that he's able to at least understand that his son is now in a better place, and at some point they will meet again.
At sentencing, Daniel's father, Hamid, also told the judge the last words he spoke to his son when he was dropping him off at his mother's house the day of his murder. He said, "Please be strong." Daniel responded, "Daddy, I'm strong. You be strong." Hamid is now living up to those words, devoting his life to being an advocate for children of domestic abuse.